I bet you didn't know that the story of Dracula begins in Romania. Wallachia. The name itself seems to whisper of old secrets. It was a land nestled in the shadow of great mountains. The Carpathian Mountains curved around it like a protective arm. Yet this land was rarely at peace. Dark forests covered much of its expanse. These forests were deep and ancient. Rivers like the Danube marked its southern border, flowing towards the Black Sea. It was a place of stark beauty and constant peril, a frontier where empires clashed and kings rose and fell with brutal speed. This principality existed in a dangerous neighborhood. It lay on the very edge of Christian Europe. To the south and east loomed the mighty Ottoman Empire. This empire was ever expanding, always hungry for new lands. To the north and west was the Kingdom of Hungary. Hungary also had its own ambitions for Wallachia. Wallachia was a buffer state, a land caught between giants. Its survival often depended on the cunning of its rulers. Allegiances shifted quickly like shadows at dusk. Warfare was a constant companion to the people of Wallachia. For centuries they fought to maintain their fragile independence. Ottoman armies frequently crossed the Danube. Hungarian kings interfered in Wallachian politics. Internal strife was also common. Powerful nobles, known as boyars, often challenged the ruling prince. They plotted and rebelled, seeking more power for themselves. This made governing Wallachia an incredibly difficult task. It required a leader of immense strength and unwavering will. This harsh environment shaped the character of its leaders. A Wallachian prince needed to be more than just a ruler. He had to be a warrior, a diplomat, and sometimes a tyrant. He had to inspire loyalty in his people. He also had to strike fear into the hearts of his enemies. Weakness was a death sentence, not just for the prince but for the nation. It was into this turbulent world that Vlad III, later known as Dracula, was born. His story is deeply entwined with this land of shadow and conflict. Vlad III was born around 1431, perhaps in Sighisoara, Transylvania. The exact year and place are debated by historians, lost to time. His father was Vlad II, a significant figure in Wallachian history. Vlad II was a voivode, a prince of Wallachia. He navigated the treacherous political currents of his time. He tried to balance allegiances between Hungary and the Ottomans. This was a dangerous game, one that often had fatal consequences. The young Vlad grew up amidst this instability, learning early the price of power. His family belonged to the house of Draculesti. This was one of two main branches of Wallachia's ruling dynasty. The other was the Dinesti clan. These two families were bitter rivals. They fought constantly for the Wallachian throne. This rivalry led to endless cycles of violence and betrayal. Being born into the Draculesti line meant a life of privilege, but it also meant a life filled with danger. Enemies were everywhere, both outside the family and within its ranks. Vlad learned that trust was a rare and precious commodity. Vlad II, the father, was a member of the Order of the Dragon. This was a chivalric order founded by Sigismund of Luxembourg. Sigismund was then King of Hungary and later Holy Roman Emperor. The order's main purpose was to defend Christianity. It aimed to protect Europe from the expanding Ottoman Empire. Members of the order wore a dragon insignia. Vlad II was proud of his membership. He even had coins minted with the dragon symbol. This association was very important to him and his family. Because of his father's membership in the order, Vlad II became known as Dracul. In Old Romanian, Drac meant dragon, so Dracul meant the dragon. Young Vlad III was therefore known as Dracula. This simply meant son of the dragon. It was a name that initially signified a noble heritage. It spoke of a commitment to defending the Christian faith. Later, however, the meaning of Drac shifted in Romanian. It also came to mean devil. This later connotation would add another layer to Vlad Dracula's fearsome reputation. In 1442, politics took a dark turn for young Vlad. His father, Vlad II Dracul, needed to prove his loyalty to the Ottoman Sultan. The Sultan was Murad II, a powerful and shrewd ruler. As a guarantee of this loyalty, Vlad II was forced to send two of his sons. He sent young Vlad III and his younger brother Radu. They were to live as hostages in the Ottoman court. This was a common practice at the time. It ensured that vassal rulers would not rebel against the Sultan. For Vlad, it was a journey into the heart of enemy territory. Life as a hostage in the Ottoman Empire was complex. Vlad and Radu were held at various locations, including the fortress of Egrigos. They received an education in many subjects. This included logic, the Quran, and the Turkish language. They also learned warfare and horsemanship. They observed the workings of the Ottoman state. They saw firsthand its immense power, its strict discipline, and its methods of control. The splendor of the court contrasted sharply with the underlying threat. Their lives depended on their father's continued allegiance to the Sultan. The experience affected the two brothers very differently. Radu, who was known as Radu Cel Frumos or Radu the Handsome, adapted well. He became a favorite of the Sultan's son Mehmed II. Mehmed would later become Mehmed the Conqueror. Radu even converted to Islam and joined the Ottoman cause. Vlad, however, reacted with bitterness and resentment. He chafed under the captivity. He likely witnessed acts of cruelty and arbitrary power. This period hardened him and fueled a deep hatred for the Ottomans. These years in Ottoman hands were profoundly formative for Vlad. He learned valuable lessons about power. He understood how fear could be used as an instrument of rule. He saw the effectiveness of swift and brutal punishment. The Ottomans were his captors, but they were also his teachers. The strategies and ruthlessness he observed would later define his own reign. His desire for revenge against the Ottomans grew strong. His resolve to secure Walachia's independence became an unshakable conviction. This period forged the future Impaler. Vlad III. Dracula eventually gained the Wallachian throne several times. His reigns were often short and fiercely contested. His first brief rule was in 1448. His most significant reign began in 1456 and lasted until 1462. He returned to a Wallachia weakened by internal conflict. The boyar class held too much power, in his view. They were often disloyal, prioritizing their own interests. Vlad was determined to change this. He aimed to centralize authority and create a strong, stable Wallachia. He would use any means necessary to achieve his goals. His preferred method of punishment became infamous impalement. He used this gruesome technique on a massive scale. Victims were slowly impaled on sharpened wooden stakes. Death was agonizing and prolonged. This was not a random cruelty. It was a calculated tool of terror. Vlad wanted to send a clear message to his enemies. He wanted to show them the price of defiance. The sight of impaled bodies, sometimes thousands at a time, horrified his foes. It also discouraged rebellion among his own people. This earned him the grim nickname Vlad Tepes, which means Vlad the Impaler. Vlad's cruelty was not limited to one group. He targeted disloyal boyars with particular ferocity. Legend tells of him inviting hundreds to a feast. He then had them all impaled or otherwise executed. He also clashed with the Saxon merchants of Transylvania. They had supported his rivals and ignored his trade rules. He launched brutal raids into their lands, impaling many. Ottoman envoys who disrespected him met similar fates. Captured Ottoman soldiers were impaled in forests of stakes. This was a clear message to Sultan Mehmed II. Despite his brutality, Vlad's actions had a purpose. He sought to impose order on a lawless land. He aimed to eliminate corruption and crime. Stories circulated about his strict justice. One tale tells of a golden cup left in a public square. No one dared steal it, fearing Vlad's retribution. He also fought fiercely to defend Wallachia from Ottoman invasion. He wanted true independence for his principality. For some Wallachians, his harsh methods were justified. They saw him as a strong ruler bringing stability and security. Section 5. Whispers of the Feuvodet, from history to folklore. News of Vlad the Impaler's deeds spread far beyond Wallachia. His ruthlessness became the subject of many stories. These tales traveled through manuscripts, pamphlets, and word of mouth. In his own time, he was already becoming a figure of legend. The stories varied depending on who was telling them. Some painted him as a monstrous tyrant. Others saw him as a fierce but just defender of his people. These contemporary accounts laid the foundation for his enduring, dark fame. He was a man who evoked extreme reactions from all who knew of him. German-speaking lands particularly produced lurid accounts of his cruelty. After Vlad clashed with Saxon merchants, they had strong motives to vilify him. Gutenberg's recent invention of the printing press helped spread these stories. Pamphlets with gruesome woodcut illustrations depicted his atrocities. They described in detail his methods of torture and execution. These Dracula pamphlets were popular reading material. They portrayed him as a bloodthirsty sadist, a veritable monster. This image took firm root in Western Europe. It was sensational propaganda that sold well. In Russia and other Slavic lands, the stories about Vlad were different. Russian chronicles also described his cruelty. However, they often framed it in a more positive light. He was seen as a strong, albeit harsh, ruler. He punished evil and corruption without mercy. His actions against the Ottomans were praised as acts of a Christian warrior. These tales emphasized his commitment to justice and order. They acknowledged his severity but often justified it. He was a stern protector of his land and faith in these narratives. Vlad III, Dracula, died in battle in late 1476 or early 1477. The exact circumstances of his death are shrouded in mystery. Some say he was killed fighting the Ottomans. Others suggest he was assassinated by disloyal Wallachian boyars. His head was supposedly taken to Constantinople. It was displayed as proof of his demise. The location of his body is also uncertain. Several monasteries in Romania claim to hold his remains. This uncertainty surrounding his death only added to his legendary status. He began to transform from a historical figure into a folkloric one. Section 6. Bram Stoker's Dark Muse, the birth of a literary vampire. The man who would truly immortalize Dracula was an Irish author. His name was Bram Stoker. Born in Dublin in 1847, Stoker was a multifaceted individual. He worked as a theatre manager for the famous actor Henry Irving. He was also a writer of novels and short stories. Stoker had a keen interest in folklore, history, and the occult. These interests would converge in his most famous creation. He spent several years researching and writing his masterpiece. He aimed to create a new kind of horror story for his time. During his research, Stoker came across the name Dracula. He found it in a book about Wallachia and Moldavia. The book mentioned a voivode named Dracula who fought against the Turks. It also noted that Dracula in the Wallachian language meant devil. This dark connotation intrigued Stoker. He borrowed the name and some minimal historical details. These included Dracula's Wallachian origins and his battles with the Ottomans. However, Stoker did not base his character extensively on the historical Vlad III. The vampire was largely his own invention. Stoker's Count Dracula was an aristocratic vampire from Transylvania. He was ancient, powerful, and cunning. He possessed supernatural abilities. He could command wolves and bats, control the weather, and transform his shape. He was also portrayed as strangely alluring, despite his monstrous nature. Stoker combined elements of existing vampire folklore with his own imagination. He created a character that was both terrifying and sophisticated. This Count Dracula was a far cry from the brutish peasant vampires of earlier myths. He was a new archetype of evil. Bram Stoker's novel Dracula was published in 1897. It was written in an epistolary format. This means the story is told through letters, diary entries, and newspaper articles. This style added a sense of realism and immediacy to the terrifying events. The novel explored themes of good versus evil, modernity versus ancient superstition. It also touched upon Victorian anxieties about sexuality and foreign influence. Initially, Dracula received positive reviews but was not an immediate bestseller. Its true impact and classic status would grow steadily over the ensuing decades. Section 7. A tapestry of terror weaving truth with Gothic fantasy. Bram Stoker's connection to the historical Vlad III was actually quite limited. He primarily used the name Dracula and the region of Wallachia, though he set his count's castle in Transylvania. He also incorporated the idea of Dracula as a warrior who fought the Turks. This much was true to Vlad the Impaler's story. However, Stoker did not delve deeply into Vlad's biography. He did not know about the impalements or the specific details of Vlad's reigns. His research was more focused on general Eastern European folklore and vampire myths. The fictional Count Dracula is vastly different from the historical voivode. Most importantly, there is no historical evidence linking Vlad III to vampirism. The idea that Vlad the Impaler was a vampire is a modern invention. It largely stems from Stoker's novel and its subsequent popularization. Vlad was known for his cruelty, certainly, but this was the cruelty of a medieval warlord, not a supernatural blood drinker. Stoker took a historical name and attached it to a creature of pure fantasy. This fusion created a compelling but largely ahistorical character. Stoker skillfully blended elements of existing vampire folklore into his narrative. He drew upon superstitions from various parts of Eastern Europe. These included ideas about the undead, the significance of garlic, and the use of stakes. He may also have been influenced by earlier vampire literature. Sheridan Le Fanu's Carmilla, published in 1872, is a notable example. It features a female vampire with lesbian undertones. Stoker synthesized these diverse elements into a cohesive and terrifying vision. He codified many of the vampire traits that are now considered standard. Dracula, the novel, resonated deeply with the anxieties of the late Victorian era. The Count represented a threat from the East, an invasion of the foreign. His predatory nature and seductive power hinted at repressed sexual fears. The struggle between Dracula and Van Helsing's group mirrored the conflict between ancient superstition and modern science. The novel tapped into fears of degeneration and the unknown. It was a powerful Gothic fantasy. It used a veneer of historical authenticity to explore the darkest corners of the human psyche and societal fears of the time. Section 8. The Count's Conquest. Dracula's Ascent in Popular Culture. After Bram Stoker's novel, Count Dracula began his slow conquest of popular culture. Early adaptations for the stage kept his story alive. But it was the advent of cinema that truly launched him into global stardom. One of the first and most iconic film versions was Nosferatu, Eine Symphonie des Grauens. This German silent film was released in 1922. Directed by F.W. Murnau, it was an unauthorized adaptation. Stoker's widow sued and most copies were destroyed. However, some survived, and Count Orlok, as Dracula was renamed, became a chilling cinematic presence. The image of Dracula was further defined in 1931. Universal Pictures released Dracula, starring the Hungarian actor Bela Lugosi. Lugosi had previously played the role on Broadway. His portrayal, with his elegant demeanor and distinctive accent, became legendary. He established the classic look of the vampire, suave, aristocratic, and mesmerizing. Dr. Acula, as he sometimes pronounced it, was both terrifying and strangely captivating. This film cemented Dracula's place as one of the primary monsters in Universal's horror canon. Lugosi became forever identified with the role. In the late 1950s, Hammer Film Productions in Britain revived the Dracula story. Their 1958 film Dracula, released as Horror of Dracula in the US, starred Christopher Lee. Lee's Dracula was different from Lugosi's. He was more athletic, more overtly menacing, and his vampirism had a stronger sexual charge. The Hammer films were shot in vibrant color. They often featured more explicit violence and sensuality. Christopher Lee played Dracula in numerous sequels. He became another actor inextricably linked to the role, offering a more dynamic and predatory interpretation. From these foundational portrayals, Dracula has evolved in countless ways. He has appeared in thousands of films, television shows, books, comics, and games. He has been depicted as a terrifying villain, a tragic anti-hero, and even a romantic figure. Each new generation reinterprets the myth. The character has shown remarkable adaptability. He reflects the fears and fascinations of different eras. Count Dracula is more than just a vampire. He is an enduring archetype, a symbol of eternal undeath, dark allure, and the endless struggle against evil. Section 9. Romania's dual legacy, hero, tyrant, and immortal fiend. In modern Romania, Vlad III Dracula, or Vlad Tepes, is often viewed very differently. He is not primarily seen as the vampire of Stoker's imagination. Instead, he is frequently remembered as a national hero. Many Romanians regard him as a strong ruler who fought for Wallachnia's independence. He stood up against the overwhelming power of the Ottoman Empire. This aspect of his legacy is emphasized in Romanian history books and popular narratives. His defense of his homeland against foreign invaders is a source of national pride for some. Vlad's reputation as a stern but just leader also persists in Romania. He's remembered for his efforts to combat corruption among the boyar class. He sought to impose order and stability in a chaotic time. While his methods were undeniably brutal, some view them as necessary evils. They believe he did what was required to protect his people and his principality. This image contrasts sharply with the monstrous vampire known to the rest of the world. For many Romanians, Vlad the Impaler was a patriot, not a fiend from Gothic horror. The global fascination with Dracula the vampire has had a significant impact on Romania. Tourism is a major factor. Sites associated with Vlad, like Bran Castle, though his historical connection to it is tenuous, and Punari Fortress, his actual stronghold. attract many visitors. These tourists often come seeking the thrill of the vampire legend. This creates a complex situation. Romania navigates between promoting its genuine history and catering to the popular Dracula myth. The vampire is a lucrative brand, but it can overshadow the real historical figure. Ultimately, Vlad the Dracula remains a figure of immense complexity. He was a historical ruler whose brutal reign became the seed for a global legend. The man, Vlad Tepes, evokes respect and fear in his homeland. The myth, Count Dracula, inspires terror and fascination worldwide. The lines between history and fiction have become permanently blurred. This duality ensures his enduring legacy. He is a Romanian voivoda, a ruthless tyrant, a defender of his faith, and an immortal creature of the night. The fascination with all his facets continues, a testament to his powerful hold on our collective imagination.